Before we begin, I'd like to apologise for the low quality in this recording. Hello, my name is Jambareeqi, and joining me for an interview is film critic Mathew Buck, who goes by the internet alias of Film Brain. Mathew hosts such film review shows as Movie Beatdown and Projector. He's also a member of the website ThatGuyWithTheGlasses.com. Thank you for joining me, Mathew.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Let's start from the beginning. What was your childhood like?
Ooh, that's a deep question. Let's start with the big one. It was okay, I guess. I mean, I've never really been one for judging that kind of thing. I was a little bit of a loner and a bit of a geeky kid, to be honest. I was never hugely popular. I was just kind of me and a little bit eccentric. A little bit. You might have guessed that already. I kind of grew up. I started out as an odd person and then generally found my feet, so to speak. So, that's kind of just, a little bit eccentric. The film thing kind of came very early. I think about 4 or 5, maybe, when that started to come in. Also, I think that was pretty much the time that really became a thing for me, and ever since then it's kind of just been something I've been passionate about, something I've been interested in. I remember when I was a kid, I used to have. Do you remember those big film review books? They used to. I'm not sure if they release them so much nowadays because of the internet, but they used to be back in the days where everyone wasn't on the internet. They used to have huge like compilation books of film guides. I remember one of the first ones I bought of those was the Variety '97 one, which I think had Arnie from Erasure on the back of them. And I used to go through that book and I'd look up movies that I knew, that I know and things like that, and that thing, and that thing, and no, I don't agree with that. And so that's kind of been. I've always been kind of fascinated by critical reading and things like that, and I'm slightly ashamed to say, I kind of read that more often than I do fiction. But I think you can obviously see that style imprinted upon my work.
So, what was school like for you?
I'm in school when it came to the education. I generally strive to push myself to be the best that I can be, and that's generally that's generally been what I do for everything. If I apply myself to something, I always try and do it to the best of my abilities. The best of my abilities, of course, meaning that I could potentially suck at, but I still try. I was elsewhere in school, and that was I was never a big fan of PE. I have several personal tales that I will not divulge here, but I was okay in school, but I was not. Secondary school, I was really not keen on. It's just I don't think I like the environment, and I will admit I got picked on a little bit. I have the trauma. That it was kind of a bit half and half, really. I just did my best, really, but I was a bit socially. I was lacking in social graces, so obviously I was not very popular. I was kind of the kid that everyone knew, but kind of kept to himself a lot, really. I think it was best that way.
So, what's the environment of Swindon like to live in?
Very mediocre. It's Swindon is kind of like a comforting hometown place for me. I mean, it's got a lot there, and also paradoxically not really a lot there. As in, there are places to go and buy things and all that, and there's a couple of okay places to go, but it's not really a huge amount. I mean, it's like I said, it's comforting to me as like a hometown. I don't think it's a place that I would stay particularly, but and I would probably move out, or probably take a job that would kind of take me out of here. I mean, I don't know. I have a bit of a. I've been to bigger and more interesting places. That said, I will admit I am an absolute townie, in that I don't particularly like going to London or big cities. I don't like the anonymity of it. Because you can kind of just blend into the masses. And when you're on your own, and I spend a lot of time on my own, it's the saying about London that I have is it's a great place to visit. It's an even better place to leave. I like towns I like cities like Bath better, and I generally Swindon's okay, but it's very average. It doesn't have a lot going for it, and it's certainly not unique.
After attending school, did you go to any universities or colleges?
I went to Reading Uni. I took a combined BA in English Literature and Film and Theatre, and I did quite well. I got a 2:1 in that, and I quite enjoyed my time at university because I like the English side. That's why I applied for that, but I like the film side as well, and I think the film side has improved the criticism side in my show. I think if you've been watching my show through that sort of period, and the first 3 years of that show, it's more the second, third, and fourth seasons, respectively, where you can see that kind of developing. And I was exposed to a lot of interesting cinema and interesting having various different meanings in that context. But there was a lot of a wide range of films that I was exposed to. And that generally is a good thing as well, because it means you can apply yourself and your own critical faculties to different genres. I think it can be very easy to get pigeonholed with certain types of genres. I'm trying to think of one specific review of mine that was really influenced by it. I think. Do you recall the One Night Stand review with Wesley Snipes? That one was, I think, particularly influenced by that recently we saw. Well, in the third year, I mean, by recently, I saw a Mike Figgis film. Mike Figgis being the director of One Night Stand, called Time Code, and many of the same traits that are in Time Code are even more prominent in One Night Stand. I didn't like Time Code. I'd actually be interested in doing something with that, because I actually went out and bought the DVD, because I did that for a paper where I discussed how, if you haven't seen Time Code and not familiar with Time Code is a film that was made in 2000 and shot on DV cameras, 4 separate DV cameras shot in real time, and they're all synced together. And it's an interesting concept, and the theory of interactivity was what I talked about. I don't think the film is wholly successful with that, partly due to the fact the plot they used is very soap opera-esque, and it kind of overrides the whole film in that there's one very key narrative that Figgis wants you to follow through the whole thing. So even though the film is partially improvised, that's not strictly... It doesn't mean that the situation feels like it flows organically. It feels very staged. This is also very clear if the DVD gives you the opportunity to isolate separate audio tracks for each of the 4 cameras. There's one camera that's following Saffron Burrows. Yeah, you can. That whole camera up there, you can pretty much ignore for about 90% of the film, because she does nothing. Her character is entirely peripheral to what's going on in that film. So there was key problems in that film, and when I was compiling movies for Snipes Month, and obviously when I was going through uni, I'm balancing what I'm doing on my show with what I'm doing at uni. So obviously, if you notice that my output has been a little bit erratic occasionally, that's probably due to exams and stuff. That's why Tooth Fairy came out so late after Wrestle Month came out in most of March. I picked up One Night Stand in my regular pound shop rate, and when I was picking out movies for the Snipes Month, that was actually not one that I'd figured would be included, because it's generally more of a highbrow art film, and that's not something that I would have normally done. and generally don't yield themselves to great material for me. But in this case, I felt I had a connection to the material that justified talking about it. And I think if it wasn't for my uni course, I probably wouldn't have taken the chance on that particular film. And I think in general, I would like to be a little bit more courageous with my choices. I think I am getting a little bit worried that that I'm sticking too much to genre pieces. And genre pieces are fine, and they're quite easy to dismantle in some cases, but there's no real challenge in that. So I would like to try and do some more. I wouldn't say less mainstream material, but something a little bit more off the beaten track. And I'm gonna try and aim for that in the new series. I'm gonna try and do things a little bit irregular. Like I'm gonna do Prometheus soon. That one is going to be a two-parter soon. And that's again, I'm probably diverging way off topic here, but yeah, that. Sorry, I ramble.
So, at which point did you get the idea to start Bad Movie Beatdown, and what inspired you to start it?
Ooh, this was ages back. I believe that was 2008. 2008 was around the time that Doug was still on YouTube, and me and my friends, you've probably seen them in the show credits. I credit them as co-creators. They worked with me on various episodes. Chris Barnard and Lewis Rogers, and we were good friends at something running at Swindon called Create Studios, which generally nurtures young aspiring filmmakers. It's a sort of self-funded. It's funded through the council, and they help the young students make films with cameras, animation, just generally interesting stuff. And I liked hanging around there, and we became good friends at that course, and we all kind of got into Doug as the nostalgia critic at the time, and we kind of wanted to do something along those lines, but maybe for something more modern, and that's kind of how the show kind of came about. And there were a few early incarnations of the show. We did shoot a couple of pilots. Actually, we shot pilots, so to speak. That makes it sound so much more professional than it actually was. What we tried to do was a multi-person review show where there would be three presenters, or there'd be two presenters like Chris, me, and Lewis. And it kind of didn't really work out that way. And so we kind of rewrote it again. The choice for Pluto Nash actually came from the fact that whilst we were at this course, there was a huge projector, and for fun we used to have like movies on in the background. And in the 99p store, there was Pluto Nash, and Pluto Nash was a film that I was kind of fascinated by for ages because I hadn't seen it, but I'd kind of seen the trailers for it when it first came out on the internet, and it disappeared without a trace for almost instantly. So the fact that it kind of appeared in pound shops, and I have seen it in pound shops since, by the way. Last year I saw it in Poundland. I was like, have I gone back in time again? Ha, ha. But anyway, so we decided to do Pluto Nash because that was one of the films that I brought in to create, and everyone was just aghast at how terrible this movie is. It's the archetypal example of a movie where they've just thrown cash at something that is just dreadful. If you watch Pluto Nash, there's not a single funny moment in it. There really isn't. It's even if you looked at the script, you couldn't look at it and say, "Hey, that's really funny," because it wasn't. There's no gags in it. It's kind of like a half-hearted straight action flick with a couple of mild chuckles in it, with a lot of really expensive $100 million production design that apparently tries to compensate for that. There is no laughs in the script, and failing miserably. So we decided to do this movie, and like I said, we did the pilot a couple of times. Didn't really work, so we kind of moved on to the idea of it just being me. And me and Chris, we shot that episode, and the funny thing was that's easily the most troubled, and I know many people who made their own videos would easily say it, the first thing they've done is the most troubled, and the one that they've had to really kind of, here's your ambition, here's what you can achieve. Yeah, so you kind of have to ground your ambition with what you can really achieve. And I think if you go back and watch that episode, I've seen the odd snippet, and I just go, I don't think I found my feet for about 4 episodes. I don't think I really found my feet until maybe, say, Darkness Falls probably would be the first one where I say I kind of got really on track. I think On Deadly Ground, which is the 6th episode, is either the 6th or the 7th episode, is about the time where the show sort of starts to come on into its own and starts to resemble what it is now. If you go back to Pluto Nash, there were things that you can see things that we abandoned, like the animated intros. There was a plan to originally do animated intros for the show, and Lewis was going to do those because he specializes in animation himself. He's a big fan of animation, and we had considered that, and then that was kind of unfeasible, so we kind of dropped that after the first episode. And Professor Saleroid was going to be a more regular presence, and then that didn't kind of work out. Unfortunately, the gambit of wacky German didn't quite work out. Although whenever we were filming those Professor Saleroid scenes, we were always in hysterics, because I know people were saying that, oh, he's incomprehensible, but that was kind of what that made it funnier to us, the fact that you can vaguely make out what he's saying. But I remember some of the stuff that we wrote for him was actually quite funny. What else was there in the first? Oh yeah, the shaky cam. We wanted to differentiate ourselves from Doug, and that was always a consideration earlier on. I think now that's not really too much of a worry. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, he's basically like the saturated British." You know, I can kind of understand that, because that's generally where the inspiration came from. But I think I think me and Doug, in terms of criticism and the way we look at movies, I think we're quite different in that regard. I think if you have, I don't think it worries if I'm, doing the same idea, jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, so long as I'm doing it in my own unique way. And I think that goes for everyone else as well. I think if you have your own voice, essentially, then it doesn't really matter. And I think I have grown into a voice. Like I said, the shaky cam was an attempt at trying to differentiate ourselves, trying to be edgy and cool. Seldom to say that really didn't work out. There are actually parts of the pilot episode that we reshot, because I showed it to Angry Joe Vargas, also on that Yellow Glasses on Bush and Thumbs, on YouTube as well. And he said, "I liked your episode, but man, the shaking, you gotta reshoot some of that stuff." So we reshot some of the episode as well. So, and generally, we've been. I always try and make the episodes to the best of my abilities, and I think that as you go through the episodes, that you can see how much I've improved, especially since I started not using Windows Movie Maker.
So, what do you believe are the key elements to a bad movie?
Ooh, now that's. I think the key elements to a bad movie. I've always been fascinated by movies and their stories and plot lines. I think this shows that I'm an English major in that way, and so I really like the core thing that gets me about film is it's a language. It's very much a language. It's a combination of obviously the script, but also on a visual level and the direction and the performances. So when it's got that kind of grammar and syntax to it. Obviously, I'm referring to things like mise en scène as well and things like that. But so really, when I'm looking at a bad movie, I'm kind of looking for 3 major defining flaws. And generally, if a movie is insanely bad, or I'm sort of, I will admit that when I'm watching a movie and it kind of gets me riled up because it's so bad, I will generally start talking to the screen like, "Why are you doing this? Why this sucks?" So, I think generally the core elements that I would look for is massive failures in story, in terms of characterization, or just general common sense plotting, or or organization, essentially, in terms of the narrative. If the narrative just doesn't make sense on any kind of level, yeah, that generally annoys me, because that's usually the first thing you can sense when you're watching a movie, is when it doesn't make sense. Most mainstream movies are designed to tell you a story, and if it fails to tell the story well, then that's generally a very bad movie. Performances as well. Although I have to admit, in mainstream movies, it's very rare to have egregiously bad acting. Like there's mainstream bad acting, and then there's Tommy Wiseau bad acting. There's like varying scales there. You know, I don't often see bad acting as much as other people do. Maybe I think I'm a little bit I'm not as sensitive to it as other people. Now, what would be another element? I reckon direction and editing, because you can normally notice those that. But again, this goes back to the storyline. It's again normally, if the direction and editing is failing, that's normally because the narrative itself is also failing alongside it. So you have that core failure in terms of trying to tell a story, compounded by several other elements that just really crucially fail.
So when did thatguywiththeglasses.com show an interest in hiring you?
Originally, I started out on the blogs in 2008. Obviously, the website had just been launched, and Mike Mashord, who runs the website, said that they were going to be looking at, they'd introduced the blog section, and they were going to be looking at hiring talent from it in order to to expand the website. And so what I started doing was writing these 1,000-word text reviews of movies that I'd recently seen. And I did that for a couple of months, and that got the attention of Rob Walker. And Rob really liked my work, and he hired me onto the site as an article writer. I think I was one of the earlier pickups on the site. I think around the time of Suede or so. And so I didn't really start off doing videos. I started off writing reviews. That kind of goes back to how back to the whole criticism thing. I've trying my hand at that, because at the time that was more what I was generally doing, more straight film reviews. The video thing kind of came out of the fact that we wanted to do that for a while, and also you could kind of sense that was the way that the site was turning at that specific time. It was becoming more video orientated, and I think in retrospect that was probably a wise decision to move from articles to video.
So how has thatguywiththeglasses.com helped you over the years, do you think?
On a personal level, I think it's helped me a lot. I think it's helped me grow into my confidence a lot. I think it's helped me mature a lot. It's certainly got me traveling a lot, which gets me to expand my view of the world. So you know what? It's probably one of the best things that has ever happened to me. I would honestly say that. I think the website is. I may have my misgivings occasionally about the website, but generally I love it. I really do love the website. I'm passionate about the people who are on it. They're good friends of mine, and I'm just passionate about the website. And I love it there. I really enjoy doing my work, and I think that's generally what you want to go for. You want to enjoy doing your work.
Can you go through the process of making a bad Movie Beatdown episode from pre-production to post-production?
Okay, be warned, might be a little bit long. Obviously, the first thing to do is watch the movie, and I should probably talk about the process of obtaining movies. I'm not sure how other contributors work. I know some of them do base what they do on requests, and occasionally I do, but not very often. That's not because I don't like requests or anything like that. It's just I generally work on my own things. I kind of don't. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think it's just generally what I do a lot is I go into DVD stores, and if I've heard a movie is bad and like my requests, I'll buy it, but it won't be an immediate priority. I kind of get to things on my own pace. So I think if you're gonna do the job, you can't be dictated by what your fans want you to do. I mean, it's good to have fans, and I love my fans. I really do. I think that I wouldn't say my fan base is humongous, but I think they're passionate. They're really passionate people, and they like I said, I love their appreciation. I really do. It's just I think it's like anything really. I think you need to if you're just doing it because you want to please the fans, but you don't. If I didn't feel like reviewing a movie, but I felt compelled to because of the fans, that kind of means that I've lost sight of what I'm intending to do. You know, so they can request movies. It just doesn't mean that I might do them. You know, but I will usually try and make an effort if I've heard things about to try and seek them out. The problem is that the way I obtain a movie is that I go into a DVD store, or maybe even places like Poundland or 99p store, Pound World, you know, the discount stores, and sometimes they'll have clear out movies or movies that are on sale, and I will go through and I will have a look and try, and generally I will bulk buy them, and just if you're planning to do a review show, and I will say this nice and honestly, don't do that. Really don't do that. As someone who has 1,000 DVDs and is entirely out of space, don't do that. But yeah, I try and work my way through that immense unwatched pile bit by bit, and eventually, and the hit rate is normally about 1 in 5. So there'll be about 5 movies usually they're very mediocre or very boring, the reject pile. I know. I've had a couple of comments on some of the films that I reviewed going, "Oh, that's boring." You should see some of the stuff that I've rejected. I really have rejected some horrendously boring movies. I will say, by the way, that I have not quit on watching a movie. If I've started watching, I will watch it to the end, because even if I hate the movie or profoundly bored by it, I will stick with it, just in case there is material there or something changes. But generally, they're usually not very good. And then once in a while, you'll hit gold. You'll hit a movie that'll either make me laugh out loud because it's that bad, or it's got such profound story flaws. I'm like, no, why is this happening? Why did I put myself through this? So obviously that movie gets put into the short list, and I have quite a lot in my short list now, because what happens with the short list is that they end up kind of getting mixed up, and other things get pushed to the front and other things get pushed back. And in the new season, I kind of want to clear out a lot of these movies because you know, you want to make way for some new stuff. So I'm going to try and do some of the things that I've wanted to do, but keep pushing back. I'm like, maybe next time. I know poor old Paulie Shore is dead. Has been waiting in that pile for years, absolutely years. And sometimes some of these movies have gone by so long that I need to refresh myself on watching them. But generally, the first step is to watch them. Then the second step is obviously scripting, and that will take a day or two. And how I normally script it is not like other contributors where they take notes during the film, then compile them into a script. I will script as I'm watching the movie. So I watch the movie, stop, recap, but try and do a recap in a humorous way, joke, and then or comment, and then move on. I wouldn't describe myself as being a strictly comedian. I try and aim for a bit of half and half, really, because I wouldn't say I'm a hugely hilarious person, as you can tell by this interview, this very, very awkward sounding interview. Generally, that's just how I sound in real life. Don't be put off. Yeah, so I watch the movie, and I will generally come up with things on the fly. I record it. That will take about between 2 to 3 hours in terms of the on-camera stuff. Narration takes an hour and a half, but the on-camera, I really put passionately put myself in, because I've heard complaints about me not really, about me being a bad actor and not doing all that well. So I've taken those to heart, and I really passionately go 110%, and I'm usually exhausted by the end of the shoot, but that generally means I put the effort in. So I like to do that. And then there's the editing. How the editing goes is that there's normally a skeleton cut. So I will. What I first do is I compile the bits to me. So the on cameras and the narrations are used to create as just a basic outline of an episode without the movie footage, and then the movie footage is put in last and inserted in around it. I think that's generally a much more economic way of doing things than, say, trying to do it on the fly. And then obviously there's the rendering out and uploading, which takes longer than you might expect, because I have a bit of a rubbish internet connection, somewhat ironically, given I'm supposedly an internet celebrity. And yeah, that's generally how that goes. And if I'm really, really pushing, I can get them out in a week. But I'd like to get things out on a more relaxed schedule. I think last year I was kind of exhausting myself by trying to. I normally have my scripts written in advance, and the way that was happening last year in the second half of the series, I was kind of burning myself out by the fact that I was scripting, then performing, then editing, and trying to get it out in the week, and then it was like, do it again, and that you can't work like that. That will burn you out very quickly. In fact, I am frankly amazed that Doug managed to do that for 4.5 years, and because that is incredible. Just working week in, week out like that to do the weekly nostalgia critics like that. That would be how he'd do it. He'd watch the movie on Thursday and then make the review for Wednesday. That's crazy. That's crazy. I don't. It's like, how did he do it?
So where did the idea for Projector come from?
The idea for Projector was something that I'd had for a little bit after I'd moved into videos and moved away from the articles, because I like doing straight reviews, and I think there are a particular subset of my fans that prefer me being straighter than trying to play to the comedy crowd, and obviously vice versa. That's how that works. And I wanted to do that, and but obviously I didn't want to do something. Again, I didn't want to be a generic film review show. I didn't want to be doing what everyone else is kind of doing, because reviewing mainstream movies, there's only so much you can say about them, but also a lot of it's been done, really. On the website now, especially, there's lots of people who do vlogs and things like that. By the time that I probably managed to get round to them, I probably wouldn't be able to add anything new to the conversation. So Projector was kind of born out of the idea that I'm going to be reviewing new release movies that have been out of the UK, but they're not out in the US. And obviously, the US being the main market for that kind of glasses, that has a specific niche. Now, sometimes it can be mainstream movies, sometimes it's smaller flicks, but I like the variety. It's actually amazing how much variety you can get if you try to do that. Because and you'll see that in the reviews. It certainly expanded my horizons, especially. I mean, I go to the cinema more often now than I used to before, and I enjoy doing that. That's something I enjoy doing. It's because that's really my hobby. That I'm really passionate about that. And sorry, I should apologise for all the umming. Sorry. Anyway, there we go again. So the Projector reviews were born out of that, and I like I said, I enjoy doing them, and they're fun to do. They're meant to be quick, sort of coffee break reviews. How I describe them, they're sort of like 5 to 15 minutes. It used to be 5 to 10, but sometimes when you get on the vlogs, I end up being so verbose that I end up extending to about 15 minutes. As you might have discovered if you're listening to this interview.
Now, a lot of your interviews open up with background information to do with the film. How much time do you spend on research for an episode, and what resources do you use for your research?
I generally there's no real amount on in terms of research. I will generally it depends on the movie. It depends on the availability of the information, and generally, what I try to do is I will look through IMDb's news section in some cases that I will research through there because you can learn a lot about the development of some projects. Wikipedia occasionally has some interesting nuggets, but that's usually for bigger movies. And I think you can, as someone who has gone to uni, you'll know that Wikipedia is not a good source to use. So obviously that's a starting point, but it's never a finishing point. That's you always try a little bit further. And for more obscure movies, I really try and root around the reviews that were released at the time and try and just find as many bits of information as I can. There's a movie that I'm doing, a TV movie called Wes Craven Presents Don't Look Down, and that movie's really quite hard to find information on. And I was blessed by the fact that there was a book that I found in Google Books about Wes Craven that talked about that specific subset of Wes Craven Presents movies, and that was an invaluable research source point for that. So generally, it's all kinds of various different sources, from books to internet to reviews to news articles, and I wouldn't say that like I say, it depends. I try not to do too much time on them because obviously that's not the entire focus of the review. That's normally just setup and background. It's good to have a little bit of background, and I try and be as thorough as possible, but obviously you want to get into the movie itself and you want to get the review over with. You don't want a 4-hour dissertation piece. So generally I try and do my research academically within a little bit of a time frame, but not too much. I generally try and look up the films in terms of research, just kind of casually on my own time, like, I'll have a look at this, and let's see what I can find about that. And sometimes, obviously, there's director's commentaries and things like that, and occasionally I will listen to those as well, especially in the case of lower budget movies where the information might be harder to find. In terms of big budget movies, there seems to be a lot of people that seem to go through the commentary tracks and then put up the more interesting tidbits on IMDb trivia. So generally it's kind of just something that I do casually, usually before I script. It's not something that I usually do after I do the script, so I will normally write the introduction obviously first rather than last.
So how do you handle viewers that challenge your opinion or point out a mistake you've made?
I try and take it with good grace. I will admit, I will fully admit that I'm human, and I've screwed up repeatedly, and I've screwed up quite a few times, and I try and do my best to be accurate, and sometimes that can be, sometimes sometimes things just slip through the cracks, and if a reviewer points it out and there's nothing really wrong with it, then I usually, if it's a glaring like factual error or things like that, I'll go back and correct it, because that sort of thing bugs me. It kind of eats away at me. I'd like to know that I like to aim to be in some quite accurate and definitive of my reviews, and if I haven't done that, I think I kind of failed at doing the review properly. I mean, I want the review to, in terms of Movie Beatdown, I want the review to be entertaining and comedic, but that still doesn't mean it can't be thorough and critical and factual. In terms of criticism, it depends on the criticism. Obviously, when you have people watching on the internet, you've got a wide variety of criticism. If there's more logical criticism, I will generally accept it. I mean, I would never say that my views are one size fits all. You don't have to agree with my opinion so long as you're entertained by it. And that I think that that's generally how I would say that I treat my reviews. They're not meant to be, guides to what movies you're supposed to like. If you like a movie that I review, I generally don't hold it against you as long as you have a good reasoning for it. I mean, if you have a good reasoning for liking a film, then by all means you can enjoy it. I mean, it's like I said, it's not one size fits all. More irrational comments are things like you can't criticize the movie, it's turn your brain off. But even in movies like that, that still doesn't mean that if I'm picking holes in it and I'm not enjoying it, then that means it's failed as a piece of entertainment. Even as one way you're not supposed to be criticizing the plot holes. For action movies, I know they're meant to be sort of turn your brain off entertainment. That doesn't mean that they have to be. You can still make smart, compelling, entertaining action cinema without treating your audience like brain dead idiots. And I think the whole idea that it's just a movie kind of encourages that sort of mentality of we don't have to try. And I think that's a really bad thing to advocate. So generally, I take criticism well, and I will admit that I take the voice thing. I will the elongating my syllables. I'm aware that I do it. I try. I really do try to curb it, but I have difficulty sometimes doing it. And it's kind of a flaw in the fact that I get so into my performance that I kind of just really get overemphasized, and I've been working on that, but sometimes it can be a little bit tactful, and sometimes I will admit that I'm much harder skinned than I used to be, but that sometimes can cut to the core of me occasionally. I'm human. Punch me and I bleed.
Bad Movie Beatdown is known for its quick-cut intro that's spliced with Ready to Roll by Jet Black Stare. What made you choose this song, and were there any other songs that you considered?
The song choice was actually won by Welshie, aka Matt Williams. He was doing the trailers around the time that on YouTube promoting the site, around the time that I was starting up my show, and I asked him if he wanted to do a title sequence, and he was more than ready to, because we like I said, Lewis, we intended to have like an animated intro sequence, didn't really work out, so that was the second option, and he chose the song as a temp track, and I really liked it, so we're keeping that song. That song's got to stay, and that's generally the story of how that song came about. I'm embarrassed to say I'm not a huge music person. I had not heard that song before Welshie had used it for the title sequence, and it just fit the show perfectly. It was kind of a little bit anarchic. It was a little bit rock. It was very fast. It was the tempo was quick, and generally it kind of gets you into the show. It kind of gets you pumped up, and it's the best possible introduction for the show. And I think, and it fits the title as well, Bad Movie Beatdown. And I generally, it kind of fits the tone of the reviews that I try and do. I try and aim for reviews that are kind of quick and well paced as well. And I think that, again, that kind of links back in with the theme song. So I think there's kind of I think that theme song has again helped my show a lot. And I owe a huge debt to Welshie for editing those title sequences and choosing the music especially.
Now, you've also had supporting roles in the website's movies, Kick-Ass Year, Suburban Nights, and To Boldly Flee. What was the experience of working on these films like?
I enjoyed them. They're a little bit disorganized chaos. Because obviously we're down there for about a week shooting these movies, and we have maybe about 5 or 6 days to shoot any of them. And obviously it's a very tight schedule. There's not a lot of room for doing multiple takes and things like that. So the way to describe being on a Doug Walker shoot is being prepared. You've essentially got to be prepared. because Doug is very much focused on getting it done. So he's not going to give you a huge amount of direction in terms of character and things like that, because obviously there's not really that much time to do that. You need to on your own explore what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it, and that's I like to prepare myself beforehand, knowing exactly what I'm going to do, exactly how I think my character should act and be portrayed, and what he's thinking, just generally, and then just applying that to the takes. And if it doesn't agree with Doug's opinion of what the character should be, then he'll tell you. That's generally what a director's supposed to do. So, and obviously you have to be prepared as well, because there's about 30 of us, and we're all young, improvising people, and we're a little bit unpredictable and crazy, and you just gotta roll with it. That's essentially what being on one of those shoes is like. You just gotta roll with it. That you don't know what could happen, but just be prepared for it. And I've gone into all 3 movies with that mindset, and I've had a good time with all of them. I enjoyed it, and I hope my performances were adequate. I wouldn't call myself a great actor, but I do try my best, and I know there are people that really enjoyed my performances in those films, and I'm thankful for those people. I'm glad that they entertain them, and I enjoyed working on all the movies. I love getting together with all the gang, and that's just generally what the shoes is like. Just gotta be prepared, and just as long as you're prepared, you should be okay.
You've also been involved with the British independent horror film Nerd Quest. Can you tell me about this film and what it was like to work on it?
I can tell you a little bit about it. For those of you who don't know, Nerd Quest is a horror film set around a LARP. I play a character named John. It's his birthday weekend, and he's invited his friends to go to this to Lord Quest, which is this LARPing group, and it's kind of a little bit run down, but it's a thing that he wants to do, and they sort of begrudgingly come along. But things take a really dark turn when people start dying, and it is a horror comedy, and I scripts by Mike and Welshie, being the producer of the project. He's very much into his horror movies. He knows his tropes and his cliches, and he knows what he wants from a horror film, and I think that's good as well. And Mike's very good at the comedy side. If you've seen his show, his sense of humor is all throughout the film. I don't think you've quite seen it in the trailers that we've released, but I think in the full film you'll kind of see what we put together. I don't know. I'm kind of hesitant to describe how much is in the film, because obviously I've not seen a completed version of it yet. It's currently in editing, so I don't know exactly what it's like. But if it's anything like what we shot, I think it's going to be very entertaining for people who want to see it. In terms of comparison to Doug Walker's shoot, it was quite well run actually. Our bad luck was with the weather, ironically enough, and that was again sort of similar to the shooting on Suburban Nights, but that's kind of something that you can't really plan for too much. It's very much act of God, but the shooting schedule allowed for us to have a couple of days washout. I know. The funny thing was, the week after it started sun shining, which I know really pissed off everyone because it was a little bit wet, and on the final day we were shooting the camp scenes, and the camp, because we were all running around in it all day and the ground was wet, it just turned into a massive bog. We lost shoes, people. We lost shoes.
So prior to all these videos and films that you've made over the years, did you have any experience in acting or filmmaking before?
Well, obviously I was at Critic Studios, so I kind of did my own little things. They're kind of a little bit, awkward, embarrassing, like Stars projects, but hey, everyone has those, and I think a couple of those are on YouTube if you really want to scour for them. Also, with appallingly long hair on my side as well. Yeah, I was not a trendy child. Aside from that, I used to take drama in GCSE and A level, and I really enjoyed that as well. I like acting and I like performing, and I'm generally a lot more courageous behind a persona or well, generally behind a script than I am in real life, and I think that's why I'm probably far more interesting on camera than I actually am in this interview. But yeah, that's generally how that's generally all my experience really. I've not been formally trained or anything. I've taken a couple of things here and there.
So, have you ever considered directing your own feature-length film?
I have a little bit. I can't really talk about it too much because obviously I have the idea. I haven't had the time to get into a script, and I've had the idea for ages now. And I'm not sure whether I should star in it or not, because if I star in this, it might come across as being too much of a vanity project. And yeah, but I have an idea. It's very small scale. It's intimate. It's more of a character piece. I would say that I'm not very good at writing comedy, so I'm not going to write a comedy. I wouldn't think it's probably going to be more of a straight drama. I did have an idea for an action movie, but I think that's a little bit out of my a little bit out of the realm of possibility at the minute. I think just this smaller scale project is pretty much the only thing I would be actively stating at the minute that I'm pursuing, but it's something I'd have to manage alongside the show. So if I could get, I kind of know what I want to do with it. It's just a matter of putting pen to paper. But I'm not going to tell you the premise here. I'm going to keep that close.
So, what do you believe makes a good internet review or a good critic?
I think, well, obviously being opinionated is a good one. I think it requires a certain charisma, sort of a certain confidence in terms of performance, something that I've kind of worked myself into eventually, and I think generally knowledge is important. Just knowing your stuff. I think that's why a lot of people like my work, is because you can tell that I'm passionate about it. You can tell that I've done the work, I've done the research, and I know what I'm talking about. I think if you know what you're talking about, if you're passionate, if I think generally having the confidence and the knowledge, you can overcome the technical difficulties. I would advise people although of course that's kind of downplaying technicals as well, because good technicals is probably something that you're more work yourself into. But if you try and aim for having a good technical quality, that's something that you should strive to have as well. But generally, fundamentally, you should know what you're talking about and be confident about it. Those are two things that I've had to kind of work myself up towards. And when I hear people say, "Oh, I've been inspired by your work because you you know your subject and you make it sound interesting," and I'm very happy about that. I'm glad that I've inspired people. I'm glad that I entertain people. I'm always worried that my sort of knowledge sort of bores people, but no, it seems to be working. So that's great. That really is.
What interests do you have outside of film?
Not very many. Um, outside of film, I'm pretty much a film guy, I'd have to say. Um, I'm generally casually into a couple of things, but not hugely. Uh, you can't just keep it film.
So, what has been your proudest achievement as an internet critic?
Just generally entertaining people. Just really, I mean, I'm I would say all of it, really. I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't define any strictest moment as being the specific greatest moment. Just the fact that I've met so many great people, and the fact that it's had such an impact on myself, and I've had an impact on so many others. I mean, many people have told me how it's helped them in quite difficult times, and that always gets me very emotional to hear about that, because when you make the show, certainly when I make the show, sometimes it can be easy to forget that, because when you're making the show, you kind of make it for yourself first and foremost. If you're doing it right, you're doing it for yourself because you want to do it, because you're passionate about it, because you love doing it. And sometimes it can be easy to forget how much of an impact it has on other people as well. And like I said, it's just been a ride. These past couple of years feel like they've flown by, and it's just moved so quickly. I couldn't pinpoint an exact high point exactly, because all of it's been great. It really has been.
Do you have any specific goals for the future that you're hoping to head towards?
Goals for the future. Okay. I used to have a sort of ambition to be an actor. I'm not sure I really have the skill set for that. I would like to act in a couple more of my fellow associates, co-producers, whatever you want to call them. I want to act in some of their films and future projects. I would love to do that, and I wouldn't mind getting a job professionally reviewing movies or something like that. Maybe I might be a good director. I don't know. I'm generally, yeah. I've got modest expectations, but I like to be. I wouldn't say I've got a plan, because life never adheres to plans. I've learned from experience that if you plan things, it never works out. Fate has a funny way of working like that. But I have my little modest ambitions, and I think that keeps me in check.
Well, Matthew, thank you for taking the time to be interviewed by me.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I know I've rambled on for ages, and apologies for that. But thank you.
I hope my listeners enjoyed this interview. If you'd like to check out Matthew's work, then head to thatguywiththeglasses.com or blip.tv and search for his internet alias, Film Brain. I personally believe that Mathew is a very talented individual. The combination of his analytical skills and strong charisma make his shows very entertaining. If you'd like to check out stuff that I've produced, then head to jambareeqi.com. Thank you.